Hey, this is Janet Stone, and welcome to the Energetic Alignment course. I really came to this course through my own inquiry, through my own exploration on what we're aligning with when we are in the practice of yoga. Are we aligning just our body, our muscles, our bones, our connective tissue? Are we aligning with Great Spirit? Are we aligning our actions? And really looking at it from the full context. So in this course, we'll definitely cover the body. We'll cover all of the delicious aspects of alignment in physical body. Again, getting into the structure of things. But we'll get into more subtle areas as well. Really exploring where some of our patterns come from, where some of our habits come from, where some of our tensions come from. Some of them are ours and of this lifetime. Some are from so long ago that we just are being handed down or woven through the time. So we're going to look at all of those elements. We're going to look at it through the body again, as I mentioned, through asana and exploring in our own practice, coming at it from a slightly different perspective. We'll explore it through our own sankalpa, intention setting, and understanding the way in which energy moves. Yeah, and becoming familiar with how it moves in our own body and how much we may have at a particular moment in time. So I wanted to slow down for a moment and begin this with this little mantra. It's Om Hrim, Om Hrim. And I'm going to close my eyes for a moment. You can close your eyes wherever you are and just let your hands rest for a moment. And as you inhale, we come into this inward gaze, this hridayam. The hridayam is the heart. So drawing attention into our heart, into the hrim, into our center. And this om can be this emanation, this expansion, as they call the om, the pranava. And it's this internal exploration of om hrim, the expansion and contraction that is happening at our very heart level. Each pulse, each pump of the heart is this mantra, Om Hrim, Om Hrim, Om Hrim, Om Hrim. Maybe even tuning the ears into your own heart. And then with me, bringing the hands to prayer, and we just feel that Om, that presence of the here and now, Om. So thank you for starting with me with mantra, as for me that represents one of the first principles of alignment or explorations, and it's spanda. It's this open and close that we can feel viscerally with our hand on our heart. And this pulsation, they say, mirrors this whole universal, I mean, not just, hey, what's the universe doing for me, but the whole true cosmos is pulsing in this open and close. I think often we get some idea that we're moving towards some notion of perfection, when indeed so much of hatha yoga is sun and moon, is expansion and contraction, is these balancing points where we start to feel less of a tension between them. But often when we're playing in these practices, we start with that tension between stillness and action. Yeah. So my story begins in that I began a practice of meditation when I was 17. And so you can imagine I am not 17 anymore. The number of years in which I was really in this internal exploration and the mind exploration, and just a constancy around seated stillness. And yet, at the same time, I was still flinging myself through space and racing mountain bikes and snowboarding as hard as possible and leaping off of any high precipice I can find, surfing, so on and so forth. And at one point, I met a teacher, and the teacher said, hey, let's line up your body with what's happening with your Atman, your soul, your spirit. So in a way, we find this hatha within you. Because I'd been at that point going to yoga practices, but just kind of getting my stretch on, moving it around. Found amazing teachers in India, but a lot of it felt not linked per se to what was happening in my meditation practice. So how do we take this physical body and link it with all of the emotions that are happening, all of the wild up and down, the great ride that we're on, and how do we align that? Yeah, the actions of our life, the doings of our life, the way that we are in the world. And, if you've done any of these programs with me before, you know that I've offered the yamas and niyamas, whether you've done them live or whether, you've seen them online, that this is also a fine-tuning. This is also a way of aligning. So let's take time throughout this process and look at what we're up to. And I will ask you some questions as we go along, and we get to go into some swadhyaya, which is one of the niyamas, some self-study, really start to observe ourselves, which I must say that asana practice is really beneficial in that area, and that we actually get to look at the body. It speaks volumes. The body, as I have said over and over again, as I've heard from my teachers as well, is a truth teller. Like, we can tell everybody we're fine, we're great, but if anyone's looking closely, they can see what's happening in the body, yeah? Or you say, yeah, I can do that, and you feel the limitations, whatever it might be. So the body's always speaking the truth, and it's a way of aligning our ego, aligning our actions, aligning our thoughts with this sense of self-study, yeah? How do we look for in that movement of open and close, expansion and contraction that feels, if you think about it, it's like, oh, I might get seasick. But this pulse, just like the heart, the hridayam, as we did in the hrim, is how do we find that stability then? How do we find this ground amidst this open and close? And so a lot of the practices will come back to that. And to me, the first ground at which I look in the framework of alignment is, what am I up to? What are my intentions? What is my deepest intention? At first, we may start with more surface goals. Then we kind of move a little bit toward intention, like what's a little more subtle level of a goal, right? It's not trying to get from here to there per se, but an intention can permeate and start to enliven our practice. So to me, that is a sense of stability, right? To start to check in to what we're up to. So we have a ground of what is holding us throughout this expansion and contraction. And the other, as we find these ways of aligning, what are we going to do with the ground, the actual ground, like pressing down, connecting in, using form, using bone to align us? And then possibly we go a little bit more subtle. So we've had the goals, maybe we hit the intentions, and sankalpa. Sankalpa is, to me, has been an endless inquiry. This goes with svadhyaya. This goes with self-study. As sankalpa really can't be arrived at through thought. It's not like we can make the checklist per se. Sankalpa is something that is living in the hridayam, living in the heart. And how are we going to arrive at what its deepest longing is?